who thunders. Even the revelation in the book of Revelation of John of the Lamb seated on the throne, of 144,000 from every tribe of Judah, Israel, gathered before the Lord, and others constantly praising our God. And even as we celebrate today, a gentler understanding of Epiphany, of three magi, wise men, kings, however we learned it in grade school, coming into the house where Jesus was and falling down and prostrating themselves before Christ, the Word made flesh. But I think there's a whole lot more to the story than that simple prostration. And there might be more to the understanding of Epiphany than the great and glorious ways in which we might imagine God. Think about the story that Phil read to us just a moment ago. And don't think about the simplicity of that story. I'd like us to think about the contradictions in that story. Herod the Great, a puppet king that's put into Judah by Rome, somehow encountering the true king of Israel. The contradiction of the birth of the Prince of Peace leading to the violence that we celebrated not too long ago and the deaths of the holy innocents. Think of even the prophecy of Micah that Phil read, and Herod's half-belief in that prophecy. A king will be born in Bethlehem, and he will be the ruler of the people. Herod sends the kings to Bethlehem so that he might kill Jesus, so that he would not become the ruler of the people. The necessity of the king of Israel fleeing Israel and becoming a migrant, a refugee in Egypt out of fear of what Herod is about. Somehow, as we celebrate this feast of Epiphany, we don't simply celebrate that short scene of the Magi coming into the house. We celebrate a whole lot of contradictions. And it's been thinking about those contradictions that made me, at least, ask myself, what is God's epiphany in its truth? We believe and we've heard that Jesus was made flesh, the Son of God was made flesh, the Word was made flesh for us. And perhaps we need to meditate on what that means in terms of epiphany. Flesh is a contradictory thing, and I think for many of us, our fleshiness is not only a sign of pride, but a sign of confusion. We're never quite sure how God can truly be in the fleshy things of our life. How God can be in our weakness and in our frailty. How God can be present in our experiences of contradiction, in our experiences of confusion. It might strike us odd that somehow God is present in those experiences that we would rather not have. and those experiences that we might want to avoid, and those experiences that we might want to run away from. We're surprised when we realize that perhaps God might be present in those experiences that we consider simply trivial, in those experiences that we don't think are of any worth at all. And yet maybe what this feast is telling us is that that is the epiphany of our God. Not only in the great and glorious things, but in our confusion, in our contradiction, in our weakness, in those things we want to run away from. Maybe that is where God is present. And maybe what this feast calls upon each of us to think about today, to do today, is to be attentive to all of the ways that God comes to us. Not only in those great and glorious experiences, but in those other experiences much more common of contradiction, of weakness, of failure, of wondering. That perhaps that is where God is truly present for us. And if we can work through those experiences, if we can allow ourselves to truly embrace those experiences, we embrace our God. And so this feast is not simply the nice feast of the three kings adoring our God and Christ. This feast might be a feast to call us to embrace those elements of ourselves that we would rather not embrace. To embrace those elements in one another that we would not embrace. And to realize that it is in those experiences that we can experience God. And that if we allow ourselves to do that, then those words from Paul and those words from Isaiah become so very important. That in our embrace of who we truly are, we also become the light of the nations. In our allowing ourselves to experience all of who we are, the bad oftentimes as well as the good, we bring one another to God. In our embrace of those elements that are wonderful about us and those elements that are not so wonderful, we lead one another to see the brightness of God shining in our midst. We become the bright